Pikmin 2 is the sequel to Pikmin, an original first-party developed title from Nintendo that was released in 2001 shortly after the GameCube launch. The original game was met with a positive response here and in Japan, thanks to its very unique gameplay and photorealistic graphics that sort of made a whole new world out of your garden. For the sequel, Nintendo has gone back to the drawing board and kind of addressed some of the criticisms that were leveled at the original game, which, as cool as it was actually pretty short. You could probably finish it in about a weekend. So for Pikmin 2, Nintendo's gone back to the drawing board and improved just about every aspect of the game, and the end result is a sequel that's better in almost every way than its predecessor. For those of you unfamiliar with the Pikmin franchise, you'll take the role of Captain Olimar, a tiny space adventurer who, when we last saw him, was seen escaping a planet that he'd crash-landed on. As luck would have it, he was able to reconstruct his ship and escape before his life support system failed, with the help of these small alien creatures that he called Pikmin because they reminded him of a brand of carrot back on his homeworld. Well, when Pikmin 2 starts, we are pretty much catching up with Olimar just as he's leaving the planet and arriving home. And unfortunately, the news is not so good when he gets there. Turns out that the shipping company that he worked for has gone into some pretty major debt. His ship is repossessed, and he's pretty much forced to save the day by going back to the planet of the Pikmin and collecting all the sorts of cool junk that's lying around it. Because apparently he can sell that for a great deal of money back home, which is exactly what his company needs. They're in debt for 10,000 Pokos, which is pretty intense. So Olimar is dispatched back to the Pikmin planet with an assistant Louie who, once you sort of look him over, you get the distinct impression that he's not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, but that's cool. He's also joined by a ship that has sort of an unnatural attraction to material goods, which turns out to be pretty handy as he's going about his business collecting all the stuff. Now, the addition of an assistant kind of segues very nicely into the game's revamped gameplay, which focuses a lot on multitasking. As a matter of fact, if you finish the original Pikmin, you might remember that the very last level was pretty intense because you're required to keep track of the different sets of Pikmin that you controlled and kind of get them through an obstacle course. Well, imagine an entire game of that, because pretty much that's what you're looking at in Pikmin 2. Multitasking is the order of the day. You will definitely need Louie quite a bit. You're able to split him from Captain Olimar, and they can each lead individual groups of Pikmin, and you can have them sort of coordinate with each other. In some cases, you can move Louie to a platform that's maybe higher than where you are, and then you can have Olimar throw Pikmin up there that he can then sort of take and use for whatever he needs to do. That level of multitasking is pretty common, and it kind of gets introduced really quickly in the game, which starts out sort of as what you'd expect, which is kind of a reintroduction, playable tutorial of the basic mechanics of the game, and then heads off into a much more complicated direction that ends up being a lot more challenging and a lot more fun. Now, besides the kind of revamped play mechanics, what you're also going to be having to keep track of are even more Pikmin to control. The red, yellow, and blue Pikmin are back from the original game. This time they've sort of been specialized a little bit more. The red are resistant to fire, as we know. They're really good attackers. The blue are resistant to water and are the only breed that can actually go underwater and do their business. And the yellow are kind of electric this time out, which adds a certain level of strategy because you're going to find areas where you'll need a certain type of Pikmin, and the challenge will be how do you get them there and how do you use them best. But in addition to those, you're also going to find white Pikmin and purple Pikmin. Now these are a little bit different in that whereas the other kinds of Pikmin come out of these sort of maracas with feet that you see early on, these pods, the white and purple Pikmin actually come out of flowers, and you create them by throwing any color Pikmin into specific flowers that the Pikmin are then eaten and then shot out as these new types of Pikmin. The two new breeds of Pikmin add a definite sense of resource management, as you're only able to get them in very specific locations, as opposed to the garden variety Pikmin that you can pretty much get anywhere you like, because where there's an item or a creature to kill that can be recycled, you'll have Pikmin. Now, in addition to the Pikmin kind of being enhanced for this outing, Olimar and Louie have actually been buffed up some as well. Each character has access to a type of potion that can be mixed by collecting berries that you find in the game. The potions will either supercharge your Pikmin and increase their attack power and speed, or, one of the more useful ones, actually freeze an enemy by turning them to stone, which is pretty much a godsend for some of the later boss fights, when you can actually freeze the boss, because you're going to find some situations where there's a lot of mayhem, and successfully getting those off is going to be a little tough. So you can probably plan on a couple deaths. Because yes, death is back in Pikmin 2. You will find that you probably shouldn't get attached to anyone, because you're going to lose a lot of your little Pikmin, be it to natural causes or just getting squashed. There's some trial and error in this, a little bit more than in the previous game. And you're going to find that when you get it right, everything's going to go perfectly and you're not going to break a sweat. But when it goes wrong, things are going to be horrible and you can expect to lose Pikmin in the dozens. So if you don't like hearing little screams and seeing little ghosts, you're probably going to want to be really careful. Now, as far as the game structure goes, Pikmin 2 follows roughly the same kind of map that was laid out by the original game. You're going to travel to different locations on a map using your spaceship. This time out, you're going to open up new locations on a map by collecting specific items. It's basically part of a globe that your computer is going to analyze and be able to determine if there is a new location for you to land in another part of the map, which is all well and good. However, once you're actually in the environment, things are a little different. As before, you're going to find that certain Pikmin can get you into certain areas of a level, and those areas are going to be very obvious, so you're going to find that you know pretty much what you need and where you need to go, but it's just going to be a question of finding the Pikmin. One of the biggest challenges is going to be getting hold of the main 3 Pikmin, because as before, you're pretty much going to have to discover them again and reintroduce yourself to them and get them to be part of the team. Red and yellow are pretty easy. Blue can be a challenge. It's kind of interesting, but definitely forces you to use your brain, which is definitely a necessary part of playing this game. In addition to finding the Pikmin on the various locations that you're going to visit, you're also going to find these artifacts that you need to collect for money to reduce your company's debt. Now here's the thing. In addition to finding these items outside on the ground, you're also going to find special holes that will let you travel underground into caves. The caves are going to vary from, you can basically think of them as dungeons. So these are basically going to be areas that you can go to and sort of, in a way, almost treat RPG style. You're going to go in with a set party, a set number of Pikmin, and you're going to be expected to solve their puzzles or just to find the pieces of junk that you need in order to get out of debt. Now, one of the main criticisms leveled at the original game was that it was very short, and you're going to find that that is really not a problem with Pikmin 2. The single-player game is about double, if not more, the length of the first game's single-player game, depending on how seasoned a player you are. But there's even more to the game this time out. Whereas in the first game you can unlock a challenge mode, which you sort of do here as well. You're also going to find there's a 2-player battle mode that is fun because it's pretty much you and a friend trying to collect each other's marbles, pretty much. You're either trying to collect a certain amount of items before the time runs out or steal your opponents, and you'll have access to all your Pikmin, and the arenas can make for some pretty hectic battles. 2-player is a very welcome new function that's been added to the game. Definitely makes for some unique gameplay experiences that were just impossible in the original game and will be impossible in the single-player game. You'll be able to fight competitively against your friend, as I mentioned, in the battle mode, or you guys will be able to tackle the challenge mode together, which certainly makes for a whole new level of teamwork. The game's split screen, unfortunately, it doesn't support any kind of LAN link or anything, or system link or anything like that. So there is a little bit of challenge in terms of keeping track of everything on screen. It's sort of like a reduced viewing area, but it's nothing major. Now, the graphics in Pikmin 2 have definitely been improved over the original game, but it isn't in a tremendously dramatic way. One of the game's biggest strengths and most charming elements to it is its subtlety. the ability to kind of recreate almost photorealistically a garden or an outdoor area that seems pretty ordinary to us, but to have it redone in such a way as to be like a whole new world is really interesting visually, and Pikmin 2 sort of expands on that. You're going to see a lot more activity in the environments, a lot more particle things going on, like flower petals drifting in the wind. You're going to see dandelions breaking apart and sort of wafting off on their own business. You're going to see undulating water. There's just a lot more to the levels. They're denser, a lot richer in detail. There hasn't been like a quantum improvement in the graphics, but in some ways that's testament to how good the original game looked. The game isn't flashy, so if you're looking for something that's moving 1 billion polygons per second with every sort of special effect turned on, you won't find it here. What you are going to find are very carefully crafted and highly detailed graphics that really are a pleasure to look at, and you're going to be looking at them a lot, so that's a good thing. As far as the audio goes, much like the graphics, Pikmin's always been about very subtle audio. And so the background music isn't too intrusive. It's well done, and it definitely matches sort of the mood of levels and what's going on in the game. But nothing really stands out terribly. It's not really made for that. It's mainly made to sort of like punctuate moments in your journey, which is fine. The Pikmin have actually been beefed up quite a bit in the audio department. They've got a lot more personality, which is a shame because they're going to die very often. But that said, the Pikmin have a lot more personality. You're going to hear them sort of talking to themselves and singing to themselves as you're going about your business, which people are either going to love or hate. Depending on the situation, the constant chatter from the Pikmin can get a little old, but that said, they're a lot livelier this time out, and there's a little bit more to them in terms of the way they behave. So if you're a fan of the original Pikmin, getting Pikmin 2 is kind of a no-brainer. The GameCube's library has been a little thin on the AAA stuff, and this is definitely some good business. That is definitely worth your time. If you weren't a fan or you're sort of on the fence, it still might be worth checking out. It's a change of pace than pretty much most anything on the market. It's very addictive. It does have support for you to play with a friend, which is always good. And it's unique. And it's definitely something that you're not going to find anywhere else.